I kind of started this in the middle of my conversion process, but you saw in the earlier video I've got a GPS speedometer. Hopefully this will focus in. And I've also got a Speedhut tach that goes with it. So this was my cardboard mock-up that allowed me to at least make sure everything fit inside the cluster. So I'm replacing the factory speedometer and tach. And this is the cutout hole, but you can see how close it is in here. I just cut it out. I barely had enough clearance for these raised portions, so I used a hole saw that just fit the hole that came in the box for the Speedhut gauges. So it allowed me to cut this plastic, but I'm also going to have to get the nut on because it comes with a big nut. So as you can see, that's going to be the issue. Just trying to get the nut to fit. But I'll have to just clear a little bit out of these edges. But the reason I did that, obviously, is because when you put it up to the light, you want to have all your identifications, like your turn signals, airbag. Well, you won't be using the airbag, but the brake and the high beams, all that working. So I'll just cut that out a little bit and make clearance for this big nut. And then that should mount the tach for me. And then I'll do the same for the speedometer. I'll come in here, cut this face out, put the speedometer in. Should be a little easier for that. There's just a big mass of speedometer parts, but that'll all come apart. Speedo doesn't work now, so I don't care about killing this one. And we'll see how it goes. So I've worked on this gauge cluster a bit. I thought I would video it just so the next time I have to take it apart, I'll actually remember how to put it together. So you got your original gauge cluster on the left. I didn't touch that. Speedo in the center and tach on the right. So there are 4 screws that hold this in, and the white piece is what you're holding in. So you got 2 on top, 1 in the bottom corner, if I can see it, and the other one in the other corner. So those 4 screws are all that hold this entire cluster assembly in place. So the wires for my GPS speedometer, I've got the antenna, your power and ground and signal, and this is your dimming wire. It goes through this, I don't know, some kind of package that allows it to dim the LEDs. So this is your main battery power. It always keeps it from losing its memory, and it does keep the GPS kind of alive. This wire is for the tach, for the signal, and then you've got your same set of wires for your power and your lights and so on. So it's easier to actually work on this with the cluster in, because you've got to plug the GPS wire into the back of the Speedo. So if you try to do that first, you've got to take everything out to get this wire in. So once you get the cluster in, it just makes things a lot easier to do. So this is a speedometer, and that brass terminal is where the GPS antenna goes. I know it looks like a bit of a rat's nest, but it's not too bad. They all pack in there very easily. I just wanted to show how that all wires in. Now for the GPS speedometer, I did have to buy a different antenna. That's what where it is up on the dash, but this wire, most of them come with straight terminals, and being that it sits back in here, it would have hit the back of this board. So I went with a 90-degree antenna. They're cheap, 10-15 bucks, so not a big deal. But unfortunately you can't cut this wire or else it won't work, so that has to go through a nice hole in the back. On the gauges, I cut this speedometer and tach out and used the original backing plates to do this project. So they're actually centered on the needles that were there before. So yeah, the speedometer is higher than the tach, but this is how the gauges were centered actually. This used to be the template that I used when I did the original setup. So you can see I had the tach higher, but the problem with that is I lost the idiot lights. So all your turn signals, seat belt, high beams, brake, all that went away. So I wanted that back, so I had to use the original plates. Now, the original dash had the clear plastic on the front, but I took that off. It just pulls off. I had to pry it off a bit, but it's lightly glued to the black backer plate. And then that plate goes back on like so. A couple screws on the top and on the bottom, just like the white backer behind it. So the problem with the clear is it hits the gauges. You got a ring on these gauges and it hits. So I'll live without the clear. It's not a big deal. Now, as I've said in a previous video, I absolutely hate this dash. The turn signals are over here on the left. They're supposed to be self-canceling, but that feature is not working. And on this one, my turn signal switch is bad, and I've only got the right turn signal but not the left. So to make the left work, I wired in a bypass switch so I can on off, manually do a turn signal to get by. It works, but it's not ideal. So I've got to replace the switch, but my problem is I hate this dash. The headlights are up here and they do work okay. You put them, they go on, turn them off, and then your parking lights and your interior dimming lights, fog lights if you got them. Real pain in the butt. So my plan is, I've seen in the schematics that the 93 steering wheel is totally different. This is the 90, and it's not compatible with the 84 to 89 steering wheels. But I've noticed in the schematics the 93 looks a lot more like the standard, so I'm thinking they did away with this dash because people were complaining about it. It makes no sense at all to have to reach up here on the dash to do what you need to do. It's down here on the steering wheel is a lot easier to work. So I've got to find somebody with a 93 steering wheel that they're parting out, and I'll change the wiring, convert it to make it work. But for now it works. Get me through this season while I'm playing with things and improving more important stuff. Now, the worst part about a 90s dash, well, not other than the functions, is to get this plate back in. And it's kind of a nightmare because you've got to get in behind here and still get your other side down and behind. So that's the way you do it. If you try to do it the other way by taking this side out first, it's really tough to do. But you can see how easy it was. You just pull it loose if you do the right side first. That just snaps back in place. Now for the main dash, that's also pretty easy to take in and out. So on the bottom of the main dash, on the right side you've got one screw, and on the left side you've also got one screw. So these are the only two screws you need to take off underneath here. And then you've got two screws that come in from the top. So there's a trim plate that goes on here. You just pop that out. And then you've got two screws that hold the top of this dash in. The problem is with the windshield in there, you're going to need a short screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver, to get at them.